All right, so next we're going to find the exact values for sine, cosine, and tangent of 30 degrees using our unit circle. So again, I'm going to start by drawing an angle in standard position. So 30 degrees would be about here. Okay. And then I'm going to draw a right triangle. So remember, from the point that I touch my circle, we're going to go to the x-axis. I'm going to draw down to the x-axis to make this right triangle. And again, this was the 30 degrees. Okay. So since I know that I have an angle of 30 in that right triangle, that means that the other angle up here will have to be 60 degrees. And then since we have a unit circle, the radius, which is from the center to the outside of our circle, that has to be 1. Okay. So what I'm going to do, again, just to make it a little bit easier on myself, so I'm not trying to squish all of my writing in, I'm just going to take this triangle and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and kind of do some side work. So again, I'm going to try and keep my orientation the same. Okay, so here's my right angle. This was 30, 60, length of 1. Okay. So this is the hypotenuse. Across from the 30 is the short leg. Across from the 60 is the long leg. So we need to find that short leg and long leg. So we always have to find the short leg first if we don't have that. So to go from the hypotenuse to the short leg, we are dividing by 2. So that means that this will be 1/2. And then to go from short leg to long leg, we are multiplying by the square root of 3. So you might want to have your 45, 45, 90, and 30, 60, 90 worksheet out to help you with those rules because we wrote those down. Okay, so again, if I'm just taking 1/2 times the square root of 3, this will be the square root of 3 over 2 for that long leg. Okay. Now, when we find these, since it's specifically telling us which angles to use, and when we draw that angle in the standard position, that is always our reference angle. Okay. So that means if we are solving this triangle, if this is my angle that I'm looking at, that theta, the side across from it is the opposite side, and then the side next to it is the adjacent side. And then the hypotenuse is still going to be the same. So if we start with the sine of 30, okay, so if you need to, writing SOHCAHTOA off to the side can be helpful. So opposite over the hypotenuse, so opposite is going to be 1/2, and then divided by the hypotenuse, which is 1. So 1/2 divided by 1 is still going to be 1/2. And we want to leave our answers in fractions, no decimals. Okay. All right, cosine of 30. Okay, so if we're finding cosine, that means that we're doing adjacent over hypotenuse. So I'm going to be taking the square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1. Okay, so again, anytime I divide by 1, I just get whatever I divided. So this will be square root of 3 over 2. And then for the tangent of 30, so opposite over adjacent, so opposite is 1/2 over the square root of 3 over 2. Now also notice how these fractions match what we're getting for sine and cosine. So I could also use the fact that we know tangent is equal to sine divided by cosine, and then take 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2, which is what we're doing here. We just got this from this triangle. Okay. Now again, we never divide a fraction by a fraction. Instead, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Okay. So when we do that, this will be 2 over 2 square root of 3. So that's going to cancel to become a 1. So 1 over the square root of 3. And then we will need to rationalize. So square root of 3, square root of 3. Oh, running out of space here. So this will be the square root of 3 over 3 for that tangent. Okay. And again, if you want, we can take our calculator and just kind of double check. So if I'm checking, let's check cosine 30. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. So I'm just going to start with this. So I'm going to do square root of 3 divided by 2. And then I'm going to type in cosine of 30 and see if our decimals match. And they do. We could also do that for the tangent if we wanted to. All right, so next we have the sine, cosine, and tangent of 60 degrees. Okay, so again, we're going to start by drawing that angle in standard position. Okay, so 60 degrees would be right about here. And again, I'm going to draw my triangle back to the x-axis. So this was 60. And again, the hypotenuse is 1 because we're dealing with a unit circle. Okay. Now again, instead of trying to squish everything into that picture, I'm just going to rewrite my triangle. And it doesn't have to be perfect, so we just got to make sure that we're labeling things the same. So here's my 60. That means that up here is the 30, and this will have a length of 1. So this time my short leg is going to be on the bottom, and then the long leg is on the side, and then my hypotenuse is 1. Okay. So again, we're just using our 30, 60, 90 rules. So I don't have the short leg, so I need to start by finding that. So if this is my short leg, I have to take my hypotenuse and divide it by 2. So this is going to be 1/2. And then to go from short leg to long leg, we're multiplying the 1/2 by square root of 3. So this will be square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so now again, this is the angle that we are referencing. Okay, so same thing as this one. So from the 60, that means that the long leg is the opposite side. Short leg is the adjacent side, and 1 is still going to be the hypotenuse. Okay. So again, if you need to, we're just referencing our SOHCAHTOA up here. So let's start with the sine of 60. So the sine of 60 is opposite over the hypotenuse. So I would take the square root of 3 over 2, and then we are dividing it by 1. Which would just simplify to be square root of 3 over 2. Okay. Cosine of 60. Okay, so again, here's my angle. I need to use the adjacent side, which is 1/2, and then divided by the hypotenuse. So 1/2 divided by 1 is going to be 1/2. And then for the tangent of 60, that is opposite over adjacent. Or again, I can take my answer for sine and divide it by the answer for cosine. So we would have the square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. So if I start simplifying, so we keep the numerator, multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. So if we multiply straight across, this will be 2 square root of 3 over 2. And then my 2's cancel to be a 1, so then this will just be the square root of 3 for the answer. All right, so I will do the next example in the next video.